A show created by the fans, for the fans. We are your home for Ohio State football coverage all year long. The Scarlet and Gray Podcast, a Network 216 production. Live weekdays on the Network 216 YouTube channel. Send us all your questions and comments on Twitter at @VSG_podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Dalton, and Nick Leisure.
Good evening, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. The live shows are finally back. It's been a while since we've been live. Very thankful to have that type of opportunity just to be back live with you guys. Before we get started, of course, there's a lot to get into, but before we do, I am Tyler Johnson, joined as always by Mr. Nick Leisure and Jordan Dalton. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing this evening?
Doing well, ready to talk some Ohio State football.
Doing great. Let's get into it, baby.
All right. Yep. We're not going to waste any more time. There is, again, like I said, there's plenty to talk about tonight. If you are joining us on YouTube, though, drop a like on that video. Subscribe if you are brand new to the YouTube channel. Completely free to drop a like. Completely free to subscribe. We really would appreciate that support. Ohio State kicked off their season on Saturday against Akron. Guys, the Buckeyes won 52-6. It started off a little sluggish, which pretty much is the staple of Ryan Day and his tenure at Ohio State. Is Ohio State, for whatever reason, just kind of starts slow in the first half. But overall, the Buckeyes won 52-6. What was a big takeaway from you guys? Again, it's only Akron, but what was a takeaway you guys saw from this game?
Good or bad?
Either one, good or bad, whatever.
Yeah, so I think overall the biggest takeaway for me is offensive line is still needs some work. I know we're probably going to get into it a little bit on the show, but there's some things like you're still not seeing that cohesiveness as a unit. And I know Donovan Jackson was out, and he's going to end up be a starter on the line, and he's one of the leaders of that line. But just kind of struggled in the run game. You thought we would kind of push Akron around, and there were some times where it didn't look super great. Granted, we ran for 120 plus yards, but it was by committee, and we never really broke any big plays. They were all pretty small gains. I think Travion averaged 6 yards a carry, and Judkins averaged 4 yards a carry. So, and that's in limited snaps. They didn't play the whole game. But I think that was my biggest takeaway. And there was definitely some good things as well, which we'll get into.
Main thing for me, I think, was just the defense, dude. Like, the defense was expected to come out and, do what they do. And, 2 defensive touchdowns, that's awesome to have. Takes a little pressure off the offense. I felt like they were flying around out of the gate. Akron did. Their first drive. They did put together a pretty good drive. But we beat their quarterback up. That Ben Finley dude, I felt bad for him by the end of the game. Jack Sawyer was in him all day long. But no, the defense. I was really happy with the defense. I didn't get to watch the game live, so I kind of had to watch it back and keep up with it as they scored and stuff. But yeah, just overall the defense, I was really happy with them. Not giving up a touchdown was just kind of what we expected. But yeah, overall good showing though.
Yeah, I would say piggyback off that real quick. Just the defense seemed a little bit more aggressive. Like they were allowing those defensive ends to kind of pin their ears back. JT and Jack were really just focusing on getting to the quarterback, and you saw it early and often with how much Finley was on the ground. Whether that's just getting hit as he's throwing the ball or if he's got to escape the pocket, he was getting knocked down. And I think that's going to be something we see a lot more of. It's something that we were screaming for last year. Like, we need to cut those guys loose on the edge, and just with the athleticism that those guys have, it was really good to see that.
Yeah, I think for me, what I really like to see, one of my takeaways is just the depth and talent that this team truly has on the defensive side of the ball. I get it's Akron, but what I'm glad we saw were a lot of guys that are going to be depth pieces this year. You need to get these guys reps. Like, you're going to need to rotate the defensive line this year. You're going to need to rotate at linebacker this year. Like, you need to do that. And I think this is a moment where guys like Gabe Powers, Caden Curry, I think Jalen McClain can get some snaps from time to time. Cade McDonald. I mean, everybody that played in some way had an impact. Joshua Mickens made a play. Like, there are guys, Lorenzo Styles, another guy. You have so much talent on this team. You need to take advantage of the talent you have. Another guy that really stood out to me, and Ryan Day mentioned him today, Arvell Reese needs to get more reps going forward, and you could make the argument Arvell Reese could start for this team. I think he's a ridiculous athlete. I think unfortunately, last year he dealt with a lot of injuries, but a young player that flies to the ball. And if you go 3 linebackers on the field, which I don't know how often they will do that, maybe more against running teams, he's going to be a very valuable piece. And you're without Cody Simon on the defensive side. But honestly, I thought the defense played as they should. But I think for me, what stood out, guys, is just the depth. Like, we know who all came back. Like, we get it. But seeing the depth and the talent that this team has up and down the defensive side of the roster, to me, it's just really impressive.
Yeah, even guy like Jermaine Matthews, who got a lot of playing time last year, he's kind of that third corner behind Igbinosun and Denzel Burke, but that's a guy that's going to be our starting 1 or 2 next year, and he's going to be getting a lot of snaps in that slot position and out wide if we need him. And you know, it's going to. They say we have the best secondary in football, and it's hard to look at that roster and not agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially with the way Lathan Ransom's playing. He looks like he's going to be our leading tackler this year. Just with how they have him positioned on defense, he's going to be making a lot of tackles in the box. And Caleb Downs is going to be all over the field. And, yeah, it's just an exciting time to be a Buckeye fan, especially if you're a fan of defensive football, which – I know we are. We love seeing that aggressive defensive style, and it's good to see that we might be able to weaponize the defense a little bit this year.
No, absolutely, and I think that was a big thing. I mean, in this game, one of the things the defense struggled with is sacks. Now, again, it's Akron. You start off the season with 5 sacks, though, so that's exactly what you want to see on the defensive side of the ball. Now I want to switch over to the offense, because one of the big questions, and we talked about it this offseason in the couple actual Ohio State offseason shows we had, the offensive line. Okay. What are your guys' thoughts on this offensive line? They played better in the second half. The first half, Akron's defensive line clearly looked like they were getting the better of us. Where do you guys currently stand with this offensive line? Because I understand we're without Donovan Jackson. Like, I get it. But Donovan Jackson was not like an All-American last year. I mean, by any means necessary. But this offensive line should, with the talent that is there, should be able to, from start to finish, dominate Akron. And it was a question mark last year running the ball, our offensive line. And it really didn't ease away any concerns on Saturday. What are your thoughts with the offensive line so far that you've seen?
I mean, it's week 1, dude. I mean, I feel like all fall, like in camp and stuff, they were just rolling out. I mean, different lineups, different guys in different spots, just trying to figure out which guys are going to roll where. So, I mean, I just feel like it's too early. I mean, you're right, though. It is Akron, and they should dominate. But, I mean, Akron's got some guys, too. So, it's like, I feel like week 1, it's too early for like jumping to conclusions on stuff. Like right now, like obviously they can get better, you know. But I mean, I don't know how many sacks they gave up. I don't think it was many. I mean, I don't know. Will Howard really didn't get pressured a whole bunch, except in like that first quarter. That first quarter was a little shaky. I mean, after that, it really felt like they kind of settled in and kind of got their groove. But to be honest with you, Seth McLaughlin looked pretty good. I mean, overall, I thought, because I know all the questions were about him, like, oh, his snaps are a little shaky, whatever. But I thought he looked really solid there at center. And then who's the other guy I'm thinking of? The Tedra dude?
Tedra Shabola, who came in and out a little bit.
Yeah, he'll be pretty good too moving forward. But I mean, it's week 1, game 1. There's gonna be some bumps, but luckily we got a couple tune-up games before we go to Eugene to kind of figure it out and see how we are on the big stage.
Yeah, I think even with the offensive line being an issue and Kyle McCord last year, and all that whole situation with Will Howard coming in, I think something we actually saw it on Saturday is his ability to get out of the pocket and break tackles. He's hard to bring down guy. He's a big dude, and there was a few times where he was kind of able to stretch a play out, shake off a defender, and make a throw. And that's not something we saw last year with Kyle McCord. They're just two different types of quarterbacks. They might bring a lot of similar things to the field, but I know we're kind of getting into the quarterback discussion a little bit early, but I think that plays into the offensive line. Like, you don't need as much from your offensive line when you have a quarterback that can do what Will Howard can do. And so I think that there's some give and take there with you're going to have a little bit of a learning curve with some of these guys not having a lot of experience on the line, but having a quarterback like Will Howard who does have that experience and that can make those plays outside the pocket and with his legs and with his strength to not go down on first contact, that might be the difference maker for this offense. So we kind of saw it on Saturday a little bit. Will Howard looked great, and we're going to talk about it, but I think that actually plays into the offensive line as well.
No, yeah, that's a really good point for sure. I mean, yeah, we'll talk a lot more about Will Howard here in just a second, but Jermaine says, can we get a real answer on Donovan Jackson, Cody Simon? It doesn't sound like it's anything serious. I mean, they're going to see how they go through with practice this week. They might play him, they might not.
Day to day.
At the end of the day, no, but listen, at the end of the day, though, for real, like, you're trying to get healthy when you go to Michigan State.
Yeah.
That's really what you're trying to do at this point.
You don't want
no reason to push it.
Yeah.
No reason to push it. Another good question here that we got from Illegal Ham to the Face. How do you think they will handle the two-headed monsters at running back? I'll answer this and I'll let you guys jump in.
Yeah.
We're not really going to see what they're going to do, I don't feel like, until we get into more of the meat of the schedule. You're not going to see a lot of Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins in the backfield together. I think that's coming. There's no reason to show that right now. There isn't. I think that's coming personally. And I think you're going to see it's going to be a lot of every other drive. That's really what it's going to be, because Quinshon Judkins did not come here to not play. Like, regardless if Travion's got – they're going to incorporate these guys. I do think if one gets the hot hand, they will ride it. I mean, we saw a little bit of that on Saturday, not a ton. But if someone gets the hot hand, they might ride it. And I think – that's kind of what you have to do, how you have to manage these guys. But also, they talked about on the broadcast, even though the CBS broadcast was kind of just brutal in general. One of the things that they do is these guys are together to keep them fresh. Yep. They understand that they're both two of the top backs in the nation, but they want to be healthy when it matters most. So that's that's how they're going to handle it moving forward.
Judkins didn't come here to carry the ball freaking 30 times a game like he was at Ole Miss. Like, he didn't come here to be the workhorse and expect every carry and get every down. So, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head, though. It's going to be back and forth, and then whoever's got the hot hand, they're going to roll with it. But also, to your point, too, why show a bunch of different looks if you don't have to against Akron and against Western Michigan, and then even against, like, Marshall moving into week 3 or 4, where that is. But, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be whoever's rolling, keep them rolling. If not, I feel like just keeping them fresh is key.
Yeah. I think, and I think some of those looks are going to be really unique and interesting things. You have to think Chip Kelly's the offensive coordinator. He's one of the best offensive coordinators in a spread offense with a read option and different types of things. And having two running backs like that with a mobile quarterback, we didn't see any read option this past weekend. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, and it's kind of like one of those things, they don't want to tip their hand and show the Big Ten opponents like what's really hiding underneath the curtain per se. So they're just they're keeping it keeping it hidden away, and there's no need to show your cards right now. And I think having Travion and Quinshon Judkins on the field at the same time is a nightmare for defenses, because you can put either one in the slot. You can motion across, have a jet sweep, coming back to a read option with Will Howard and Travion, or whatever you want to do. And there's so many things that can go on there offensively. We're not going to see it this week against Western Michigan, but you better bet we're going to see it once Big Ten play starts.
Absolutely. Now to move on to Will Howard. So one of the things that when the Buckeyes originally brought in Will Howard, a lot of people like, you're bringing in a mobile comm McCord. You're bringing in a guy who has never been super accurate in his career, things like that. So on Saturday, Will Howard, I mean, I thought he played pretty well. He was not helped out, of course, by a lot of drops, surprisingly, by some of his receivers, but he was 17 of 28, 228 yards, 3 touchdowns, 8.1 yards per attempt, also ran for 18 yards. How did you guys think he played on Saturday? Personally, for me, I'll tell you what's refreshing. Having a guy back there that can extend plays with his legs, actually step up in the pocket, deliver the ball. I know it's against Akron, but I was really encouraged with what I saw from him in that game, and even throwing the ball down the field, which everybody said was something that he is not very good at. Looked fine to me. Again, it's Akron. I understand, but I think Will Howard is definitely an upgraded quarterback than what Ohio State had last season.
See, I'm kind of torn, I guess. I mean, don't get me wrong. He played really well. First game in the shoe. I mean, that's probably kind of an overwhelming experience for him coming from Kansas State, where, he's not used to playing in front of 102,000 people on any given, Saturday afternoon. But I mean, like you said, though, he made the plays. He still threw for 228. And we all three of us, we know he doesn't need to be Superman for us to be successful this year at Ohio State. So, I mean, to throw 3 touchdowns, and he kept it clean, no turnovers. That's what's encouraging to me, is that there's no turnovers. Like, he looked clean, didn't turn the ball over, made some really good throws. Like that throw that he made to Mecca, that should have been a touchdown. That was incredible. The over the shoulder that he had to Jeremiah Smith, the one-handed, that ball was right where it needed to be. He put the ball in some spots that were really impressive. It is Akron, but still, they're still a Division I program, so they still have athletes like we do. But overall, it's encouraging. He's just got to build on it week over week. You can't take a step back next week against Western Michigan. He's just got to keep getting better and better as he progresses through. But for his first start as an Ohio State Buckeye, it was probably as good as you could expect.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on being torn in the situation, because I wasn't really that big of a Kyle McCord hater. I thought Kyle threw the ball. He threw a beautiful football. There were some issues with, I think he would doubt himself on the field a lot and doubt the decisions he was making when he was throwing. And I think that ended up being his demise in Columbus. But I think Will Howard just, he brings a kind of a swagger to the quarterback position, and it is very refreshing to see somebody that like really takes hold of that position and can just run the offense and make the throws. And he didn't have a turnover in the game. He didn't have a single pass that would have been a turnover. Like every single ball was where it needed to be. I think he was late on like 2 or 3 throws, but nothing that was like detrimental to the offense, live to fight another down type of thing. And even though the offense started slow, like they found that rhythm, got the ball, they got the deep ball working. They were able to hit Jeremiah Smith, he looks like Marvin Harrison Jr. out there, and he's filling that. I mean, that was something we had talked about. We were like, is he going to play that Marvin Harrison Jr. role? And he's like, yeah, he is. He's definitely playing the Marvin Harrison Jr. role in this offense. So,
and it's funny, we say that the offense started slow. It wouldn't have
if he didn't drop the ball.
If Jeremiah holds on to that first one, it wouldn't have started slow. I mean,
his first first game in the shoe. You got 18 years old. You just got to let him work out the nerves a little bit. But he showed out, and I think Will Howard's legs is a big thing, and his size. We were kind of talking about it between us in the group chat with two of the big quarterbacks that we were kind of looking at in the transfer portal in the offseason were Riley Leonard and Will Howard. And when you look at them on paper and their stats, and if you kind of seen them play on and off, like they have pretty similar style games. They both can run. They both can throw the ball. Will Howard's big question mark was the deep ball. Riley Leonard's he didn't really throw NFL routes when he was at Duke. A lot of chunk plays, but they weren't like out routes, like hitting. And I saw a lot of NFL routes that Will Howard was throwing this weekend, especially that back shoulder he threw to Jeremiah for his first career touchdown, where I'm just like, man, like maybe we got the better of the two guys. And I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see, like, as the season goes on, like how that translates to better competition.
Yeah.
But,
no, I mean,
overall, like it was good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of touched on it with Will Howard. This is a guy that seems to have a swagger to him. Guys gravitate towards him. Yeah. And I think that's really encouraging to see. I mean, you listen to him talk about the honor it is to be the quarterback at Ohio State. You haven't really had that in a little while. Like, I mean, with like last year, it kind of seemed it was just another game. Like it with Will Howard, there's like, it just means, you can tell it means something to him. And I think that really just goes a long way too. And I like to see the fact he seems to have really good command of the offense. I like the fact too, I'm sure you guys saw this too, that nice run that he ended up, that nice scramble he ended up having to, gets up, kind of does a little bit of a celebration. Like, I need that from my quarterback. I want a guy that has some swagger to his game. Like, I think you need that at the quarterback position personally. And so I love seeing that from Will Howard. You brought up Jeremiah Smith. So Jeremiah Smith is obviously not your typical freshman by any means. He should have had 3 touchdowns, probably 150 yards. Anyway, finishes with 6 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns, 15.3 yards per reception. So there are I'm seeing a lot of videos out there. I'm sure you guys are too, that he's already a top 5 wide receiver in college football. The question is with Jeremiah Smith, because you could set unrealistic expectations for him this year, like that he'll be a Heisman Trophy candidate, things like that. What are realistic expectations for Jeremiah Smith? We saw what he did in game 1, but do you guys think he's going to end up leading the Buckeyes in receiving this year? Because I still personally think it's going to be a Mecca Buka, but what are your guys' thoughts?
I don't know. I think part of me wants to think that they were trying to get him the ball as much as they could just to try to get him like settled in, it's Akron, big first game, like just kind of get him settled in, get him acclimated, get him, in the end zone early. Cause it looked like they were trying to go his way quite a bit, especially early. I mean, obviously, what other freshman's going to get a receiver screen ran for him on the second play from scrimmage, unless they're really trying to get him the ball and get him his first catch, I think he could still go for like 850 yards, maybe get to 10 touchdowns, I think isn't like far-fetched. I mean, he had 92 and 2 in this first game, but I still think it's probably going to be, I think I'm with you. It's a Mecca and then probably JJ and then probably Carnell Tate third, but I think it'll be close. I think they're all going to be up there together in yardage. It's not going to be like one running away from the other, I think.
Yeah. I am going to disagree a little bit. I think like a good expectation for him this year is 1,000 yards. He's going to break the freshman receiving record at Ohio State this year.
Yes.
I think he will get 10 touchdowns, and I think he will lead the team in receiving just because I think it was kind of like you said, are they getting him involved early or are they getting him involved because he's the best receiver on the team?
Right.
And I think that there's an inkling in Columbus that he is the best receiver on that roster right now, and they need to get him the football. And so I think he'll end up leading the team. But I do think Carnell Tate and Emeka Buka are going to be pretty close behind. I wouldn't be surprised if we have 3 receivers over 750 yards this year.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be surprising at all. So, yeah, that's my prediction. I think he's a special receiver.
Yeah, he's a freak, man. I heard on the fan. AJ Hawk went down to practice, and it was the first time he had seen him in person. And he said, I guess he said like Bobby Carpenter or something. He's like, which one? Like Bobby pointed him out, and he's like, who? Like he didn't say like who is that? And he said, what is that? Just because he's just such a specimen on the football field, and like seeing him in an actual game situation, it shows that he's the real deal. I mean, the kid from Alabama is going to be really good too.
Ryan Williams is
I still think we got the best freshman receiver, and he's in Columbus because he's special. I mean, we got him for 3 years, which is even crazier.
What's crazy about Ryan Williams is I believe I could be incorrect. Someone in the chat, if I'm incorrect, please let me know. I believe Ryan Williams actually reclassified.
Yeah, he's only 17, dude.
Yeah, he's a very good player. This entire receiving class of 2024, Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams. I mean, even a guy we're not going to see probably at all this year, Mylan Graham, he's up there too. I mean, there's a lot of talent in this class, but I mean, Jeremiah Smith, especially with who ends up being quarterback next year, because it looks like it's obviously going to be Julian Say and Aaron Nolan or Tavian St. Clair. I mean, then you have the possibility of, as a sophomore, he's contending for a Heisman. It's not that far-fetched at all. No. But as far as like this game, guys, what's anything else that kind of stood out to you just from this game? Again, I know it's Akron, but just anything else that kind of caught your eye?
I thought Brandon Enos did a really good job returning punts. He didn't get a lot of returns, but he looked pretty electric when he had the ball. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of something we had on our game preview. We're like, man, we just want to see some electricity when somebody catches the football. And I thought he brought it. I think he might rip off a couple big returns this year.
Anytime you hear Ryan Day talk about Enos run, he just said he just runs like so aggressively, but he's really skilled with when he's got the ball in his hands. And you definitely saw it. I think he had like 60 return yards or something like that total over like 4 months. I mean, that's 15 a clip. I mean, that makes a big difference from catching the ball at the 20, you're getting into the 35, or you're just fair catching. Like 15 yards, it makes a difference. But on my end, dude, I think James Peoples is going to be pretty good.
Ooh,
yeah.
Yes.
I think he's going to be pretty solid. I mean, got into the end zone in his first game as a Buckeye too, which is always sweet. But yeah, I think he's kind of a sleeper. Well, I remember when we recruited him and we got him to commit. It kind of went over some people's radar, under some people's radars. I mean, because especially with TC Caffey going down, like that was obviously a big loss because I'm sure he would have gotten those carries instead of James Peoples on Saturday. But I mean, I think he'll be a really solid back, especially once Quinshawn and Travion move on to the NFL. So I like what I saw from Peoples on Saturday.
Me too.
One thing that, and again, it's one game, okay? But one thing that when you have so much talent at one position, and in this case, I don't have to talk about it on defense. On the offensive side of the ball, you need to rotate these receivers. Like, and listen, I know that sounds crazy. I understand that. Brandon Enos needs to get more than 17 snaps, period. Like, there's no reason Brandon Enos needs to get –
It's so hard to get him 17 snaps, though.
Yeah. I understand that, but, like, this is a guy that is a great talent as well. Like, he should be on the field too. Like, you cannot have Brandon Enos just only being involved in the return game. He's got to be more involved in that personally. Like,
he redshirted last year. He redshirted?
I don't know if he might have redshirted last year.
He didn't play at all, hardly.
He had that touchdown against Purdue. Now keep in mind he was a late enroll.
So he probably in the fall.
So
that was the thing because he was
he's a sophomore. He didn't redshirt.
he was a higher recruit than Carnell Tate, but Carnell Tate was an early list and kind of
got the offense down.
Yeah, and kind of hopped him in the chart. And then, I mean, Carnell Tate's also a very good receiver.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I think I agree with you, TJ. I think
it's tough, but
yeah, and like Mylan Graham's right there too. So it's a pretty crowded room, and
Graham didn't even get snaps on Saturday, which I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at though with Enos is like, Emeka Egbuka has an injury history, okay? Right. And Emeka Egbuka on Saturday ended up playing 50 snaps, and that's fine. That's fine. But to me, if I want to keep Emeka Egbuka healthy, I need to even it out a little bit between Egbuka and Enos, because Enos is going to be that guy that ends up replacing Emeka Egbuka next year. And Enos, I'm telling – a lot of people haven't seen it because he hasn't gotten the time. Enos is a good player. And one big thing I have against Brian Hartline that he's got to do a better job of, you got to have a little bit more of a rotation. It's so easy to go out and just put the same 3 on the field every time. It is. But, dude, take advantage of this talent that rarely anybody else in the country has. And I'm hoping against Western Michigan we see more of it. Hoping against Marshall we see more of it. And that way, when we get to Michigan State, we get to Iowa, we get to Oregon, that you have a little bit more of a rotation going. And we didn't even talk about Bryson Rogers, who I think could end up being a sneaky player for the Buckeyes this year as well. I just think in these games especially, these guys have to get reps. That's just, again.
The early season.
Yeah. Well, that comes
Rogers had 10 snaps. That was late in the fourth.
I feel like we don't see a lot of 4 wide sets either. It's always like 3 wide and a tight end. That's what it always seems like. 3 wide and a tight end, or 2 wide and 2 tight ends kind of deal. So, I feel like we could definitely open it up a little bit and go some 4 wide sets, trips, stuff like that, because you just don't really see it from Ohio State a lot.
It's going to be hard, though, man. I mean, we're talking about this team that has 2 of the best running backs in the country.
Yeah, you're right. No, for sure.
Talking about a true freshman, Jeremiah Smith, who's already seeing the field and making an impact.
Yeah.
You have Emeka Egbuka, who's been projected anywhere from 1st to 3rd round, but he's obviously a talented player.
Yeah.
Carnell Tate, who saw a lot of action last year, and he's going to have a really big opportunity this year. We have some tight ends that are pretty highly recruited as well, and that need them.
Yeah, that's true, dude. So, there's so many mouths to feed.
Here's a question for you guys then, because I'm glad, JD, I'm glad you brought it up. Dude, I'll be honest, I don't know what we're doing at tight end. Because G. Scott cannot block, okay? He is not, and it's understandable. He's not a big guy. For a tight end
from OU.
He's all right, too. He's nothing special. Jelani Thurman had 18 snaps on Saturday. Will Kaczmarek had 20. G. Scott Jr. had 19. Jelani had 18. Ryan Day also said that Jelani needs to get more reps moving forward. What do you guys think ends up happening at tight end? Because at some point, you need to go with a guy there. And I personally, this is, again, just personally, Jelani Thurman needs to be that guy. I understand he's got some inconsistencies. I saw some inconsistencies and still have from G. Scott, okay? And I understand he's a smaller guy, so on and so forth, at the position. Dude, if I'm seeing inconsistencies with that from a 50-year senior, give me the guy that has more potential at that position than anybody else on the roster, please.
I think the whole G. Scott experiment, it's just he wasn't good enough to play receiver anymore, and they were just like, okay, well, we still love to have you because you've been a Buckeye. You've stayed here your whole career. It's like, so we'll put you at tight end and give you some snaps. But, yeah, I mean, obviously, the guy that gives you the biggest upside, it's obviously Thurman. I mean, the kid is 6'6", 260 pounds, runs like a receiver. I mean, he's big. He's athletic. The dude's just a freak of nature. But at the same time, I mean, I feel like Kaczmarek is definitely going to be your more of a,
in-line blocker.
Yeah, he's going to be your extra lineman, that's not really going to catch a lot of passes. And that's why we were so lucky to have Cade, because he could do both. Yeah. I mean, he was a physical blocker when he was blocking. Sometimes he had inconsistencies as well. But when he blocked, like, he was a really physical blocker, but he was also a really good pass catcher. So, like, we were pretty lucky to have him because he did both decently well. And right now we kind of have a room of guys that can't really do both really well. They kind of do one thing good and the other thing not so good. But I think Thurman, just athletically and explosively, he gives you the higher ceiling than some of these other guys on the roster.
Yeah, and so moving on here a little bit, we've talked ad nauseum about Ohio State and Akron. I kind of want to move on because we did get a question about Oregon, so it's a great time to go around the Big Ten. Running Bald Man, love the name, says it's only been 1 week, but I'm hearing Oregon could be our only loss in conference play. What are your thoughts on that? Are we so sure that Oregon is the juggernaut that people say they are? I mean, I don't know. I understand it's their first game too, but dude, they looked brutal against Idaho. And Dylan Gabriel, man, like, everyone wants to talk about Will Howard. Dude, Dylan Gabriel did nothing that impressed me. I mean, he threw for a lot of yards, but he also threw it over 40 times. So, like, I'd hope you could have a lot of yards from that. I don't know.
Everything I read about that game, because to be full transparency, I only saw the highlights, so I don't really know. Everything I heard and read was just that Oregon just lacked physicality against Idaho. I guess they went for it a lot on fourth down, and that's why Gabriel threw for a lot of yards. And he threw it a ton of times because they're going for it on fourth down, and they just weren't converting. So that's why they didn't translate into a lot of points. So it sounds like they were in shape to score a lot. They just couldn't close out drives, which I think is interesting. I mean, but to be fair, I guess Dan Lanning's always going to be that super aggressive guy. He's not going to want to settle for 3 against teams especially like Idaho. But I guess from everything I read, Oregon just lacked physicality the whole game. Which, if you're going to come to the Big Ten, I mean, if you lack physicality against Iowa and you go up against that defense, like, it doesn't matter how explosive your offense is. If you can't block the defensive line, like, you're going to lose.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be an interesting thing, especially with these Pac-12 teams coming over. See how they adjust, because it's a different style of football
for sure.
I mean, and you could say whatever you want about Big Ten football and the lower half of the teams, but every game is a dogfight, whether you want it to be or not. Like, those teams are all going to go for your head, and they're going to play physical football. And when it's winter and you're playing in Northwestern and it's freezing outside, or you're at Purdue, or you're up in Wisconsin, or you're playing Minnesota, like those teams, like, they might not be the most talented teams, but they're always going to play hard. And it's just a different type of football than the lower half of the Pac-12. So, I mean, you can just look at the Pac-12 and how it divided and where the teams went, and you can kind of tell, like, the quality of team based on where you went. It's like those really good Pac-12 teams, they went to the Big Ten because they know they can kind of compete with the good Big Ten teams.
Right.
But the rest of them, like, they're going to be lower half ACC teams. They're going to be lower half Big 12 teams. Like, it's definitely interesting to look at.
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. And you look at Oregon. They weren't the only team in the Big Ten that kind of struggled a little bit on Saturday. So another good question. So no dogpiling on that team up north. They're getting boat raced against Texas. Yeah. What were you? So JD, Nick, I don't know. You probably just saw the highlights because I know you.
I'll keep up with the score. That's about it.
Oh, so, yeah. We can talk about this right now. Yeah.
What? Listen, I'm not here to dogpile on them either, because it's 1 week. Okay, I'm not gonna say someone sucks based off one. Like, I just think that's wrong. Personally, they have a quarterback problem right now. Up north, Davis Warren starts. Doesn't do anything spectacular by any means. Alex Orji can't throw the football, but is a ridiculous athlete. So I don't know about you. I don't know about you, JD. If Fresno State had anybody, and to be fair, not many teams do, that could remotely block anyone on Michigan's defensive line, Fresno State might have actually had an opportunity to pull off an upset on Saturday. So, Like, what were your thoughts kind of just seeing a little bit on Michigan? They clearly, man, they need a quarterback. They miss J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, so they were doing a really strange thing, which I highly don't recommend, but they were swapping out quarterbacks every play for a couple of series. And it was like they would have Orgean for one play, and then they would run it, obviously, and then they keep him in, and then they try to throw it with him, and he ground ball it, and like it, and then they would bring in the other quarterback, and it was like their series. They just like they had no chemistry. There was no rhythm with the quarterbacks. Offensively, it was kind of a mess. Donovan Edwards looked really good when he got blocks, but they were kind of just selling out on the run because they knew like the Michigan quarterbacks couldn't throw. And it was really interesting to see. And it was kind of what we had talked about offline where we weren't really sure. Like the team itself is pretty solid. They lost a lot, 23 juniors and seniors from the national championship team last year. But there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered with that team. And going into Texas, and Texas looks like the world beaters right now, and their offense is clicking, and they got a lot of really good players. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas ran it up on Michigan next week.
I think Michigan's only hope is that it's at their place. I mean, the Big House is definitely one of the tougher places to play in college football. So if Quinn Ewers can go up there and will that Texas team to a win, I think that'd be pretty impressive. Because, I think that's Michigan's only hope is that their defense is really good and it's at their place, so they'll have home field advantage. Is that a noon game or is it a night game?
It's noon. It's a noon kickoff.
That's so
big noon kickoff is there.
That's so lame. I feel like
we get to actually see it though because Ohio State plays at 7:30.
Oh yeah, we have Western Michigan at 7:30, baby.
Yeah.
I think I agree though. I think Texas could, if they get clicking early, I think Michigan could fold and it could get ugly.
Yeah. I just don't understand. Again, I saw it too. I don't understand what the benefit is to rotating quarterbacks every other play. Like, I don't. Now, I get it.
It's so silly.
If you're in the red zone and you want to use like Alex Orji down there for rush, like, I get that. That actually makes a lot of sense. Or if maybe like Davis Warren starts for a quarter and you want to give Alex Orji maybe a snap in the second quarter. I don't know. Like, to try and keep defense off balance. Switching every other play is something that people would do in NCAA football 14 back in the day. If you had multiple quarterbacks with different skill sets, that's a video game, not real life. And I don't know what Sharon Moore is doing. I don't know what they're doing over there. At some point, they got to give somebody the keys over there.
So do you guys remember when Cade McNamara,
McNamara?
Cade McNamara.
And J.J. McCarthy they were competing for a job. Do you remember how they started that season? It was very similar to what they're doing right now, where they were like, we haven't named a starter yet, and they were kind of giving each drive to each quarterback. Not swapping quarterbacks on the same drive, but they were kind of doing the same thing to kind of test the waters. And I think Sharon Moore is kind of taking a page out of the Jim Harbaugh playbook and is trying his best to emulate his idol. And it's not going great. I don't think there's going to be a lot of good things happening for Michigan this year, if I'm being honest.
Will they be in the top 25 at the end of the year?
No, I don't think so. If so, if they do, it's because of their defense, not because of their offensive prowess.
Yep.
I'm going to say they will.
I think they'll be like.
I'm going to say they will.
They'll definitely be in like the lower half.
They won't be in the playoff.
Like, no, I think like 18 to 25. I think that's where they'll finish.
I like that. I think that's. I think
they lose to Penn State this year.
Dude, Drew Aller.
I think they lose to Penn State.
That's a big game. Going to Morgantown, had some weather issues, so the game kind of got pulled on and delayed. And Drew Aller looked pretty good.
Looked good.
Yeah, I mean, if they can unlock that kid's full potential, he can throw it. And he's shown that. So someone to watch out for. I know we say that every year though, but it's Penn State at the end of the year. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Penn State, and James Franklin loses the big one. So,
hey, going to Penn State though, it's always one on the map. So it'll be.
I'm sure we'll both be undefeated, and I hope
it'll be a tough game.
Yeah,
it'll be a tough game. As we're kind of wrapping things up, guys. This weekend in college football, Nick, again, I know you had to see a lot of highlights, but just what were some of your takeaways just from some of the games that you were able to catch, like Georgia, Clemson, or just from any of the top teams out there you were able to see a little bit of?
Yeah. Georgia's good. Clemson's not.
Florida State, they suck.
Florida State, they are not ranked. Hey, they're not ranked anymore. They went from top 10 to 0-2 by week 1.
See you later.
Not even be ranked.
DJU is –
they're gone.
DJU is new.
I don't like piling on him, but, man, he hasn't been good in college football. Like, he had a okay year last year at Oregon State.
What else? Oh, Colorado, undisciplined, but they're going to be fun to watch.
Talented.
Yeah.
Just talented, top heavy. They're top heavy.
Shedeur and Travis are just must-watch TV, so it's like they're going to be awesome, but like they're not going to be very good. They might win 4 games.
I understand that like people could feel a certain way about Shedeur. It's understandable, but I'll tell you what, that dude, the pressure that's in his face and just him dropping straight dimes is just it's absolutely insane to me because
pressure.
The amount of times that there is pressure in his face and he just stands there and throws a strike, that already, and again, we don't talk like a lot of NFL draft on this show or anything like that. That right there to me is why he could very well be the top pick in the draft.
It's just because how Deion cooked it up like that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It was all by design.
When you can make plays like that, I understand, like, there's a little bit of baggage there just with attitude, things like that. But I'll tell you what, from a skill set standpoint, that's the type of dude that can win you football games if he has enough talent. Like, that can win you football games, enough talent around you. He goes to the right situation in the NFL. And I'm talking a team like the Las Vegas Raiders that has Devontae Adams, things like that. Jerry loves a new shiny toy. Very well would succeed there. Like, so I'm just saying, like, people talk about Shedeur all day long. They make fun of him, and I'll admit it is kind of fun to do. But the kick and ball, the kid's a baller. He just has no talent around him besides Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that. Nick and I were talking before the game, and we're like, man, like, I don't understand the hype behind Shedeur. Like, he's pretty mid. And then, like, halfway through the game, I text Nick. I'm like, hey, I think Shadeur's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's pretty solid, dude.
He's pretty good.
Because, we were kind of hating on him a little bit. We're like, I don't know if I buy the hype. And then it's like,
yeah.
I mean, some of the dude, like, he's literally throwing. It is so funny because I'm sitting there with my wife. I'm like, wow, he can just throw the ball so well off platform. I'm out here using NCAA 25 terms, describing players now. I'm just like, geez, dude, what is going on? He's got elite off-platform throwing.
I got to ask you guys about this because it's a huge topic around the college football world after this happened. Is the U back? Is Miami football? Is the Miami Hurricanes? Are they back, and are they a contender?
Florida just sucks.
Yeah, we'll talk later in the season.
Like hit us. In
Miami very well could go undefeated because that schedule is literally.
Yeah, I think they'll win the ACC.
They're going to be in.
I think that's.
Yeah, they'll be in the playoff for sure. Cam Ward, man, he's pretty good. He's pretty good, but I mean, I think it's too early to say the U is back because Florida just.
I feel bad.
Yeah, man. It's just Napier just has driven that program into the ground, dude.
Like, he won't make it through the year.
No way.
Man, can you imagine Deion with the recruiting in Florida?
He wouldn't recruit. He's the transfer portal.
Can you imagine though him or even going back to Florida State?
Yeah, it would be crazy. And both could be.
I mentioned going back to Florida State. I mentioned that last year that would be
nuts.
Yeah.
Norvell.
I also heard USC, but I mean,
Where's Lincoln Riley going?
I know. Well, that was assuming they were going to lose. But Miller Moss, man, that kid can play too.
Yeah,
he's pretty good.
That was my favorite takeaway. That was a really good game.
That's a big win for USC.
The U is Notre Dame tier. So that brings up another. Okay, that's another good segue. Everyone's helping us segue into other topics. So first off, thank you guys in the chat for that. Notre Dame went to Texas A&M on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be honest, they kind of took it to Texas A&M. Notre Dame has 2 road games, like actual road games the rest of the year, because they have like 3 or 4 neutral games, and then the rest are at home. Is Notre Dame okay? Here's a question, not playoff, because they're probably more than likely going to make the playoff at this point. Is Notre Dame a title contender with Riley Leonard at quarterback?
No, I don't think so.
Depending on who they draw, they might be a first round out.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big win, but I mean, I don't know how good A&M is. I know it's such a difficult place to play.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, though, that game, it was just like a defensive slugfest. Like,
well, I will say Notre Dame's defense is pretty legit, and we saw it last year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was the last play of the game to win last year. Like, I mean, I don't know.
They have one of the better defensive lines in the country too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a title contender, Notre Dame, though. Yeah, I agree on it, Bald Man. Yep, Jordan hit that on the head too.
Yeah, it just depends.
That would be hilarious.
If they end up drawing like the group of 5, they might end up winning that. But I don't know how they're going to end up.
Like I like Marcus Freeman when he's not coaching against Ohio State. So it was that clip of him like hyping his team up before the game, that got me kind of fired up. That was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Coach. I think he's the players' coach.
He better do well this year, because if he doesn't, they might give him the axe.
Yep.
Another good comment. Louisville fans are all hype being in the top 25 after 1 week. In my opinion, finished no higher than 20-25. It's so tough because the ACC is so wide open. I mean, it really is. Clemson's not the dominant team that they used to be. Virginia Tech lost to Vanderbilt, so who knows where they're going to be. Miami, they play nobody. Syracuse, they play nobody. But
North Carolina's starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Listen, I think low-key, I love the way Georgia Tech plays. And if there's a team that could sneak in the ACC and potentially – and I'm not saying they're going to. If you want a sleeper team to win the ACC, it's Georgia Tech. I really think they're a sleeper team to win it.
It's so hard to predict after 1 week. It
is, but that's what makes this fun, though, because then you can look back and see, like, hey, did this actually happen?
Did Georgia Tech play this week, or were they off?
They played.
They played Florida State week 0.
Week 0. Did they play
Georgia State? Georgia State beat them 35-12.
They had a cakewalk game.
Yeah.
They deserved it after that, though.
Hey, all I know I'm backtracking to Notre Dame, but my Northern Illinois Fighting Huskies take on Notre Dame this week.
We had a lot of action games.
Ontario Brown, baby. He's going to take him to the promised land.
Kent State.
So for anyone not understanding what we're talking about, we do currently have an online dynasty right now where we are all MAC schools. So I'm Eastern Michigan. Jordan is Kent State, who, by the way, has some of the most insane uniform combinations that you could possibly imagine. And then Nick has Northern Illinois. So Ontario Brown is like a fantastic. So for those who don't know, Ontario Brown's a fantastic football player, first off, because we didn't know that. Nick ran for like 2,000 yards with the guy. But yeah, that's what he was referring to for anyone who's in the chat. And literally, you have no idea what we're
Ontario
talking
Brown,
about.
Go look him up, bro. He's a dog.
He really is.
Well,
hey, it's some of the most fun football you ever watch is the MAC.
Seriously,
it's electric, man. I'm not gonna lie. Wait till they get into conference play. I think I might be on my TV screen during.
There's never a time where a MAC team is playing that I'm not rooting for the MAC team unless it's against Ohio State.
Yep.
Like, they're playing
100%.
any other team, like a big school. Like they were Western Michigan played Wisconsin. I was like, dude, if they could beat Wisconsin, like
it was close for a little while.
It was a really close game. So I love rooting for the MAC. A lot of Ohio schools in that.
A lot of Ohio players too.
Yeah. But yeah, just so anyone who was extremely confused at where that reference came from. You brought up Wisconsin though, Nick. Wisconsin kind of struggled against Western Michigan a little bit. So I have some coworkers that live in Wisconsin or Badger fans. A lot of fans up there are not too fond of Luke Fickell. They think that the people he brings in to run his offense that aren't very good. First off, they don't like the fact that the money going into the program, it's going to upgrades and not so much to the recruiting aspect of things.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Luke Fickell is gonna? What do you think ends up happening with Luke Fickell at Wisconsin? Do you think it succeeds? Do you think if potentially this season does not go the way they think that he gets fired? What are your thoughts on Fickell?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like for so long, like when you think of Wisconsin football, you think of really good running backs, really big offensive line, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now, since Fickell's taken over, he's like trying to turn them into like a spread, but like it like doesn't work. I don't know. I just feel like they're kind of getting away from what they've always been known for. It's that ground and pound, we're gonna run it down your throat type deal. I don't know.
It's so tough, dude, because like when you bring in a new head coach, that's the difficult part. Sure. Like when you bring in a guy that you're looking for to lead your program, you go like you mentioned their previous success at running back. Luke Fickell like wants to run a more open offense. When you bring in a guy like that, you have to know that's what's going to happen. So I think at least, and this is a good comment, gets at least 3 years. I would kind of agree with that because if you're going to implement a new offensive philosophy in college football, it's not like forget NFL because that's a whole other subject. But college football, you not only have to get the right coaching staff in there, you have to get the right recruits for your system.
Unless Urban Meyer who did it in a year.
Yeah. But let's be real. Who also has those resources at their disposal?
I'll say, built different.
Yeah. I mean, it's so I agree with that. I do think he gets 3 years personally. And unless they just bottom out so bad that they have to get rid of him.
Yeah, I think it's a very similar situation to Matt Rule in Nebraska. I think Matt Rule is starting from a worse position, and he's kind of already leapfrogged Luke Fickell. And like they're both in their second seasons, right? And I think just the fact that he got Dylan Raiola to commit and has like the number one quarterback commit in the country is already putting Nebraska above Wisconsin in the Big Ten. So I think I think Nebraska is more of a threat towards the top half of the Big Ten than Wisconsin is, just because of that. And having him for the next 3 years as your starting quarterback, you kind of have a guy that he might not be a superstar yet, but in year 3, that guy could be a number one pick.
Oh, yeah.
And so
junior, baby.
Yeah, I mean, they're very similar situations. And Luke, I mean, we've had Luke Fickell as a head coach. We've had him as a defensive coordinator. He's not known for his offensive mind or anything. So I don't know why you would change something that's not broke. I feel like Wisconsin's always solid. Like they didn't have a good quarterback for a few years, but they always had the run game.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why you would go away from that because you can recruit for that just based off of tradition. And you can throw down the list of offensive linemen that are currently playing in the NFL that were Wisconsin offensive linemen. And
one of the greatest.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I not super optimistic on Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, but kind of rooting for him to finish above 500.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. I'm rooting for Luke Fickell as well, as long as he doesn't ever beat Ohio State. As we're wrapping things up, though, guys, anything else you want to add before we end this episode?
Nah, bro, I'm all good.
That was good. We're back.
All right. Well, Everyone, thank you for tuning in this episode of the Scarlet and Gray podcast. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you are brand new to the YouTube channel. We will talk to you guys all again next week live. As always, go Buckeyes.